we'll be talking some Sabres hockey.
Great to be here.
How's your night so far?
Oh, it's going pretty well. Can't complain. How's your night?
Going good. Um, just ready to talk some Sabres hockey with you.
Definitely.
How do you think um Don Granado and Kevin Adams did um through half of the season?
I mean, the second half of the Sabres season was definitely pretty encouraging, especially after like the first half we've seen with that huge losing streak and kind of just like where the team was at under Ralph Kruger. I mean, Ralph Kruger, it seems like the players liked him a lot. I know Eichel and Okposo really had high praises for him, but it didn't really seem like he had some of the guys in the locker room on his side. I mean, we've seen some of the younger players, they've been talking about how much better things have been underneath Don Granado, especially guys like Middlestat and Dahlin, just getting more freedom to play. So I feel like those guys have definitely benefited from Don Granado. And also the team itself, I feel like the plays definitely improved down the stretch. I mean, obviously the record improved a bit, probably still not where it needs to be close to a playoff spot, but definitely better than what they had before when they were, I mean, on that 18 game losing streak. And then Kevin Adams, I think he's kind of dealt a very interesting hand. I mean, pretty much from everything we've seen over this past off season, kind of like most of those moves. I mean, it's kind of hard to decipher whether that was like Ralph Kruger making that move. Was it ownership? Was it Kevin Adams? Because I mean, it's pretty clear that Ralph Kruger brought in a lot of his own guys, so it's kind of hard to decipher like which players Kevin Adams brought in. But I mean, 32nd or 31st place, your first season as a GM's, it definitely isn't too great. So I think the jury's definitely still out on Kevin Adams. I mean, we'll see how much control he actually has. I mean, maybe they give him more control as a general manager in his second year, and maybe he could possibly make some improvements. I mean, possibly expanding on the analytics department, just tiny things like that. I mean, just those moves at the margins that the Sabres have been losing for so long. I mean, they really just need to start winning those and really just all the small details and even the bigger deals. Like, I mean, the situation with like Eichel coming up, situation from Reinhart, Ristolainen. I mean, he's definitely going to have his hands full this offseason.
Do you think I put a poll out on Twitter earlier? Um, do you think that um Don Granado stays, or do you think he would be out?
I would say, I mean, I think at this point, I definitely think Don Granado should stay, and hopefully the Sabres kind of view it the same way. I mean, I think he's definitely earned another shot. And I mean, with the current state of the Sabres, I mean, with kind of their whole future up in the air with Eichel, Reinhart, possibly those guys both wanting out this off season, and we could see those two trades happening. So, I mean, really, with all that, I think it's kind of hard to attract really other head coach candidates other than Don Granado, who you already have right there. I mean, obviously, Granado seems like a great coach, and I really don't want to see him placing kind of like that Ted Nolan type of situation where he's like the head coach while the team is kind of like intentionally being bad to get good draft picks. That definitely wouldn't be the best for Don Granado's future career in the league. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. Maybe the Sabres can stay a little competitive during this looming rebuild that could be coming up. I mean, I guess we'll see. But I think Don Granado, I mean, definitely really what he's done. He came into a really tough situation and he was kind of able to turn the ship a little bit, got a lot out of the young players, and seems to have a lot of the support of the young players who, I mean, could be the core going forward. So I think you might as well keep Don Granado and, I mean, see what we could get out of him. What do you think, Robbie? You think they should keep Don Granado?
I I would say like try to get an experienced coach if you can, but if not, then um try to stay with Granado, and hopefully the team does good this next upcoming season. How do you think like Kevin Adams and Jason Carmanos are doing together like so far with the team?
I mean, I think we're going to see a lot of the moves that Carmanos makes as the assistant GM probably coming up pretty soon. I know the Sabres were very close to expanding their analytics department last season until ownership kind of put the kibosh on that. And that's kind of something that Carmanos did in his time in Pittsburgh. He started the analytics department there during his time there. So I think he's a great guy to have in charge to get that analytics department kick started. I'm really not sure how much of an analytics guy he is himself, but I mean, he's been able to create analytics department other teams. So obviously, I think he's going to bring in some smart analytical minds to fill out that staff that the Sabres have kind of been lacking for a while, and really just filling out that scouting department too. I mean, some of those reports from Elliot Friedman from earlier in the season, how they don't have scouts in like certain leagues, how it's kind of all video scouting now, which I mean, a lot of teams probably had to deal with this season because of COVID. But I mean, going forward, uh, I mean, there's definitely advantages to video scouting, but if other teams got like boots on the ground at other games, other countries, finding those hidden talents, and the Sabres are just stuck with video scouting, that's definitely a little bit concerning going forward. So hopefully, with the addition of Carmanos, they're really looking to kind of just fill out that front office because right now, I think it's kind of like a skeleton of a front office. I mean, this is Carmanos, his third organization, so he definitely has experience in the NHL. And I think he could be a guy that could really help steer the ship in the right direction with the Sabres. And I mean, with those, I mean, we could possibly see Eichel and Reinhart being traded this offseason, which would be pretty crazy. And I hope they kind of have a full front office established before they make really significant moves like that. So, I mean, I guess we'll see going forward because, I mean, they really just need to do something with that front office because I think it's pretty obvious that the model they had last season is just not something that's going to work going forward, especially after finishing last place in the NHL this season.
Do you like do you think like Sam Reinhart or Jack Eichel could get traded? Even though Sam Reinhart is an RFA.
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think with Sam Reinhart, it's very interesting because his contract expires going to this offseason. He's an RFA. He's got one more year of being an RFA before he hits unrestricted free agency. So Sabres are kind of faced with a very interesting situation. I mean, this is a situation where Sam Reinhart kind of has a lot of leverage on the team. I mean, we could see, I mean, if he elects to go into arbitration himself, we could see him get up to a 2-year deal. If the team elects to go in arbitration, he could go down to a 1-year deal, which would just allow him to walk into free agency. So, I mean, that's definitely a situation they have to keep their eye on. But I mean, it's a situation also where if Sam wants out, he definitely has a control right now to kind of force the Sabres' hand. And I think if we do see a guy like Jack Eichel being traded this offseason, who also has an interesting contract situation, because while he's still under contract, next season is his last season before his full no move clause kicks in. So that will allow Jack Eichel to kind of control his destiny of where he's traded to. And that's really not something that you want in play when you have to trade your star player. I mean, Taylor Hall, we've already seen what happened regarding him, kind of how that really lessened the return on what he got to trade deadline just because he kind of controlled where he could go. I mean, he only really returned a second round pick in Anders Bjork, and the Sabres had to add Curtis Lazar too. So you definitely don't want kind of a similar situation to happen with Jack Eichel. So I think he's a guy who you may have to move this offseason if you do decide to move on from him, and if you think the situation between him and the team is just beyond repair. And I think if that Eichel trade does happen, I think it pretty much like wouldn't make sense if Sam Reinhart also wouldn't want out, because I mean, obviously both those guys seem pretty close, kind of developed through the organization together. So I mean, I think if Jack gets dealt this offseason, I think you're gonna have a really hard time convincing Sam Reinhart to stay, even with a lot of money. I mean, we saw his end of season presser, and he definitely looked like he just didn't want to be there and looked extremely disappointed. And I mean, he's getting up there in age too. Second half of his 20s, still has yet to play in an NHL playoff game. So I could definitely see a guy like him just wanting to show off his skill in the playoffs, because Sam Reinhart's a pretty underrated player in the game today, kind of because he's always been on a bad team. I mean, even though he's a second overall pick, I still feel like he doesn't get the appreciation he deserves with his play throughout the league. So I think I could see him as a guy wanting to go to a playoff team and wanting to really show off what he could do, just kind of at a higher level.
What did you think of the addition from Boston when Taylor Hall and Curtis Lazar got traded and Anders Bjork came into Buffalo?
I think, I mean, I was definitely hoping for a little bit more in a trade return. I mean, I definitely wasn't expecting much, especially after hearing like kind of how much Taylor Hall controlled what team he would be traded to. It sounded like he was more open, but after all those press conferences after the trade, it sounded like from both sides that Taylor Hall had his mind set on going to Boston. So I think that kind of lessened the return a bit. I mean, second round pick, I mean, I guess I'll take it. It's something. Anders Bjork, I think he could be a pretty solid player. Uh, I'm probably not as high on him as a guy like Jake DeBrusk. Like, he would have been a guy I would have preferred to see in the return for a trade with Boston. But I mean, Bjork could be a solid player. Still kind of have some questions about what his ceiling as an NHL player is. I think he could be a solid bottom six player, but I mean, I have a hard time seeing him ever really emerging into like kind of like a top six winger that is really comparable to Taylor Hall. I mean, I know Taylor Hall was an expiring contract, so that definitely lessens his return a bit, and that no move clause. So I mean, all that being considered, I mean, I guess I'll take that return, but it's definitely not something I would be like crazy about if I'm a Sabres fan. But I mean, it's not my money that paid him $8 million this past year. So I mean, they pretty much got an asset out of something that they did not even have in their organization last year in Taylor Hall. So I'll take it, just not too happy about it.
What do you think of like Darlene's um development through the coaching situations?
I think Darlene, he was definitely a guy that was really affected under Ralph Kruger. I mean, Ralph Kruger has a different coaching philosophy than I probably would have, just because he really wanted Darlene to focus most of his game on what he wasn't good at, just to kind of improve that area. And I know there's a bunch of other coaches, like D. Boucher is an example. He kind of wants 80% of the players' game to focus on what they're good on, 20% to try to improve on what they're not great on. And with Ralph Kruger, we kind of saw those two numbers reversed. I mean, he really just wanted Darlene to focus on defense, and that kind of wrecked his confidence on the offensive end of things. And under Don Granato, I mean, we've definitely seen just Darlene be able to move around more. He's been getting shots in closer to the net. I mean, really kind of seeing his game on the offensive end of the ice really start to blossom. I think the main concern with Darlene at this point is still the defensive side of his game, because all elite defensemen are good defensively, and Darlene's shown the ability to be good on offense, but defensively, he still hasn't really caught up with his peers in a similar age group. I mean, I know he's still really young. Hopefully that part of his game will come along eventually, but I mean, if he wants to reach these lofty comparisons of a guy like Nick Lidstrom, he's got to be amazing offensively and he's got to be elite defensively too. So, I mean, we'll see if that defensive side of his game eventually comes along, because that's really going to be the thing that separates him from really the rest of the defensemen in the league. I mean, we've seen what he could do offensively. I mean, we've seen him put up crazy numbers at SHL. I mean, outproducing some first round picks that were forwards as a defenseman in the SHL with a late April birthday. So, as a prospect, he profiled as a really high end elite player. But I mean, to be that high end elite player in the NHL, especially as a defenseman, I think he still needs to improve that defensive side of the game. But I mean, I can't deny that the offensive side of his game is just really exciting, and he's looking like a special player on that side of the puck.
Do you have any questions for me?
All right, I got one question for you. What do you think's going to come first, a Bills championship or a Sabres playoff appearance?
I would say probably the Bills going to the Super Bowl.
Great answer. I think that would be my answer too.
Do you think the the Bills have a good enough team to make it to the Super Bowl this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think they definitely do. I mean, I think last year, I mean, I think they had a good enough team to beat Kansas City last year. I think just a couple plays where they kicked field goals where they should have went for it, could have still been in the game late in the game. And I think they're just a little bit of luck away from being a Super Bowl champion. I mean, they got all the pieces there. They have their high end quarterback, which is huge in today's NFL. I think they definitely have all the pieces there to win a Super Bowl. I mean, it's just really getting those right bounces in the playoffs, and I think they're definitely right there. So it's definitely a really exciting time to be a Bills fan.
What did you think of Brandon Bean going out and getting Mitch Trubisky?
I think that's definitely pretty interesting. I mean, I had some friends that were Bears fans, so they weren't too happy what Trubisky did in Chicago. But I think as a backup quarterback, I mean, I think it's just a perfect option. Just because, I mean, Matt Barkley is kind of getting up there in age. And I think with a guy like Trubisky, I mean, he's younger. He's shown he could be at least like an average quarterback at the NFL level at times. So, I mean, say Josh Allen goes down, which would be horrible, but if you could slide a guy like Trubisky in there, I mean, you don't have to really throw away the rest of your season. He still at least gives you a fighting chance. And he's on a pretty solid contract too with the Bills. So, I mean, it's definitely a signing I'll take for the Bills. And uh, I'm a big fan of it.
So, like, do you think that when Bean and McDermott picked up that fifth year option on Josh Allen and Tremaine Edmonds, did you think that was a good move?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty good move. I mean, Josh Allen's next contract's definitely going to be interesting. And I think with a guy like Josh Allen, before you commit a ton of money to him, it might not be kind of the worst idea to see like what he's able to do this season. Because I mean, to be honest, we've gotten one good season out of him as a quarterback, and I really think I think he's I mean I think he'll always be like in that elite category. I mean, I would argue that he was a top five quarterback last season, but I mean, just because of that small sample size, I don't know. There's just like some risk involved with it, but I think Josh Allen. I think he's going to be the guy going forward. So they're probably gonna have to pay up no matter what. But I mean, it doesn't hurt to see what he could do this season, I would say.
Do you have any more questions for me before I
I
wrap up
guess
the show?
yeah, we'll do one more Bills question. I mean, is this the season the Bills win the Super Bowl? Do you think they could do it?
I think they could get to the Super Bowl, but I think they would. I think they would make it a close game.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if they get there, I mean, I'd be happy with that. Anything could happen in that final game.
Thank you for watching this episode of Let's Talk Someone Six Sports. Thank you to my guest Walter, and have a great day.